Okay, let's go. Number 1, the atlatl. Close your eyes. You're a soldier in 2026 holding an M4 carbine. State-of-the-art ballistics, computer-designed rifling, decades of military engineering. You can hit a target at 300 yards with lethal force. Now picture a hunter 25,000 years ago holding a wooden stick with a hook on the end. No gunpowder, no metal, no modern materials. Open your eyes because that Stone Age weapon matched your rifle's performance. This is the atlatl, a spear thrower, and it shouldn't exist. You're standing on a hillside in what will become Germany 400,000 years ago. In your hand is a wooden spear, 6 feet long, perfectly balanced. The shaft tapers precisely from grip to point. The center of gravity sits exactly where your throwing motion generates maximum velocity. Someone engineered this. Someone understood physics. Someone calculated leverage ratios, weight distribution, and aerodynamic stability. And they did it 390,000 years before the first pyramid. The Schöningen spears, discovered by archaeologist Hartmut Thiem in 1995, proved this was an accident. 8 wooden spears, preserved in a peat bog, each showing identical engineering principles. Tapered shafts, optimal balance points, aerodynamic profiles, and yet mainstream archaeology calls them crude tools. Around 25,000 BCE, someone had an idea. What if you didn't throw the spear with your arm? What if you extended your arm? A wooden shaft 2 feet long with a hook at one end. You place the spear's base in the hook, you throw. Physics happens. The atlatl multiplies leverage by a factor of 3. Your throwing motion generates 150 miles per hour of velocity. The effective range jumps to 200 yards. The kinetic energy rivals a modern handgun. John Whitaker at Grinnell College has spent decades testing atlatl ballistics. In skilled hands, an atlatl matches or exceeds bow and arrow accuracy. The projectile hits harder, penetrates deeper, and yet around 10,000 BCE, most cultures abandoned the atlatl for the bow. They chose the inferior weapon. The Aztecs didn't. When Spanish conquistadors invaded Mexico in 1519, Aztec warriors used atlatls. Spanish accounts describe atlatl darts punching through steel armor. The Spanish had guns, the Aztecs had physics. Modern experiments reveal something unsettling. Olympic javelin throwers after years of training can't match prehistoric atlatl accuracy. The technique requires biomechanical understanding we've lost. Grip angles, wrist rotation, hip drive, release timing. Cave paintings from France to Australia show atlatl technique in precise detail. And what else did they know that we've forgotten? From physics mastery to something even more disturbing. A weapon that required understanding human anatomy in ways that shouldn't have been possible. Number 2, obsidian blades. You're lying on an operating table. The surgeon picks up a scalpel. Stainless steel, precision ground. The edge measures 300 nanometers thick. Now picture a surgeon in 2026 putting down that steel blade and picking up volcanic glass napped 10,000 years ago. The obsidian edge measures 3 nanometers, 100 times sharper. This is happening in operating rooms right now. Dr. Lee Green at the University of Michigan uses obsidian scalpels for delicate wand surgeries. The cuts are so clean that healing time drops by half. Neurosurgeons request obsidian blades for brain tissue work. The Stone Age blade is superior to modern steel. You're standing in what will become Mexico 10,000 BCE. In your hand is obsidian freshly struck from a volcanic core. One precise blow and a flake detaches. The edge is sharper than anything that will exist for the next 12,000 years. You understood conchoidal fracture. You knew exactly where to strike, at what angle, with how much force. Don Crabtree spent 50 years replicating prehistoric obsidian napping. His conclusion, the precision required is staggering. Understanding internal glass structure, predicting fracture propagation, controlling force vectors. And yet mainstream archaeology calls this Stone Age technology. Archaeological sites across Mesoamerica reveal obsidian workshops, not random flaking. Industrial production, standardized blade sizes, quality control. Trade networks stretching over 1,000 miles. Trepanation drilling holes in skulls performed with obsidian tools. The patients survived. Bone growth patterns prove it. But here's where it gets darker. Aztec codices describe obsidian knife techniques for human sacrifice. A priest could remove a beating heart in under 10 seconds. Spanish conquistadors documented this with horrified fascination. The obsidian knife cut cleaner than Spanish steel. The napping technique requires master-apprentice transmission. You can't learn it from a book. This knowledge system survived for 10,000 years. Then Spanish colonization arrived. The masters died. Within 2 generations, the technique was nearly lost. How did Stone Age humans achieve nanometer precision without microscopes? Where did the anatomical knowledge come from? And what else died with the last master craftsman? from blades that cut flesh to weapons that killed from impossible distances. Number 3, the composite bow. Picture an archer 300 yards away. You're wearing bronze armor, the best protection 3500 BCE can offer. The arrow hits your chest plate traveling at 200 feet per second. The bronze crumples. The arrowhead punches through. This is the composite bow, and it makes metal armor obsolete. You're holding what looks like a curved stick. It's not. It's a laminated composite structure that took 2 years to build. The core is wood. The belly is water buffalo horn compressed under enormous tension. The back is sinew, stretched and elastic. Between each layer, animal glue bonds the materials with chemical precision. Each layer exploits different physical properties. Horn resists compression. Sinew handles tension. Wood provides the structural framework. The physics is identical to modern fiberglass composites, except this is 3500 BCE. The manufacturing process is staggering. The glue must cure slowly, under controlled humidity and temperature. Too fast and it cracks. Too slow and it weakens. The process takes 1 to 2 years. Someone had to figure out optimal curing conditions. Someone had to discover which animal glues worked best. And yet it appears fully formed in the archaeological record around 3500 BCE with no developmental stages. Modern bowyers have tried to replicate Scythian composite bows using traditional methods. The failure rate exceeds 50%. Even with modern materials science knowledge, getting the layers to bond correctly is difficult. The ballistic performance is terrifying. Effective range exceeds 300 yards. Armor penetration surpasses any single material bow. Scythian burial mounds excavated across the Eurasian steppe contain composite bows alongside warriors. The construction is identical across thousands of miles and hundreds of years. Standardized technology. Genghis Khan's armies conquered half the known world with composite bows. Mongol horse archers could fire accurately at full gallop, reload in seconds, and maintain sustained fire rates that European crossbowmen couldn't match. Where are the failed prototypes? The experimental designs? The gradual improvements? Composite bow technology shows up complete, sophisticated, and standardized. The adhesive chemistry alone suggests accumulated knowledge. Animal glues require specific preparation, boiling temperatures, reduction times. Scythian bows from 2,500 years ago still show intact glue lines. How did nomadic peoples develop materials science without laboratories? Where did the knowledge of layered composites originate? Why does this technology appear complete rather than evolving gradually? From materials science to chemistry, a weapon that didn't kill with force but with knowledge of the human body that shouldn't have existed. Number 4, poison arrows. You feel a pinprick on your arm. Barely broke the skin. 30 seconds later, your fingers go numb. 1 minute and your legs won't hold you. 2 minutes and you can't breathe. 3 minutes and you're dead. This is 40,000 BCE. Chemistry won't be invented for another 39,000 years. You're standing in the Kalahari Desert with a sand hunter. In his hand is an arrow coated with paste that took 3 days to prepare. He collected Diamphidia beetle larvae from specific shrubs, not any other species. He crushed them, mixed them with plant sap, reduced the mixture over low heat, and applied it with precision. Too much and the poison degrades. Too little and it won't kill. This is pharmacology. The Sand people have used this exact process for at least 40,000 years. Archaeologists found arrow points in Border Cave, South Africa, with residue analysis showing the same beetle toxin. The application technique is identical. The dosage calculation is identical. Someone figured this out 40,000 years ago, and the knowledge survives 1,600 generations. And yet mainstream archaeology dismisses this as trial and error. 3,000 miles away in the Amazon, indigenous tribes use Carrere. Different poison, different source, same sophistication. Carrere comes from stretch-nose plants through multi-step boiling and concentration. Get the chemistry wrong and it doesn't work. Get it right and you have complete muscle paralysis in minutes. Richard Schultz, the ethnobotanist who spent decades studying Amazonian plant knowledge, documented over 40 different curé recipes. Each tribe had variations, different plants, different preparation methods, different potency levels for different prey. They calculated dosage based on target body weight. The preparation process requires botanical knowledge that rivals modern chemistry. You need to know which plants contain active compounds. You need to understand extraction techniques. You need to control temperature and concentration. And you need to pass this knowledge down through generations using only oral tradition. Colonial powers stole the recipes. Carrere became a medical paralytic used in surgery. The indigenous chemists who developed it over millennia got nothing. Archaeological evidence pushes poison arrow used back 40,000 years in Africa. Ethnographic documentation shows independent development in South America, Southeast Asia, and Central Africa. How did Stone Age humans identify neurotoxic compounds without understanding neurons? Where did the extraction chemistry knowledge originate? Why does sophisticated pharmacology appear in the archaeological record without developmental stages? From chemistry to metallurgy. A weapon that shouldn't exist because the technology to make it didn't exist yet. Number 5. Damascus steel. You're a metallurgist in 2006 examining a 1700-year-old sword under an electron microscope. You're expecting standard steel crystallization patterns. Instead, you see carbon nanotubes, cementite nanowires, structures arranged at the nanometer scale. This is technology we invented in 1991, except it's from 300 BCE. Damascus steel. The blades had a distinctive watery pattern on the surface. They were legendary. A Damascus blade could slice through European swords, bend without breaking, and hold an edge through years of combat. Then around 1700 CE, the knowledge died. No one could make them anymore. For 300 years, metallurgists tried to replicate Damascus steel. They failed. The wavy pattern could be faked, but the performance couldn't be matched. Flexibility and hardness. Sharpness and durability. Properties that shouldn't coexist. In 2006, Peter Poffler and Marian Rebold at the Technical University of Dresden published findings in Nature. They'd examined genuine Damascus steel blades using electron microscopy and found carbon nanotubes and cementite nanowires, structures measuring 10 to 100 nanometers in diameter. Carbon nanotubes were discovered in 1991. They're cutting-edge nanotechnology. They require sophisticated manufacturing processes and precise control of carbon chemistry. And yet Damascus steel smiths were making them in 300 BCE. The process was called crucible steel. You take iron ore, add specific plant materials as carbon sources, seal everything in a clay crucible, and heat it to precise temperatures. The steel that results has carbon content around 1.5%. What matters is how that carbon is distributed. J.D. Verhoeven at Iowa State University spent decades trying to understand Damascus steel. His research suggested the nanostructures formed because of trace elements in the original Indian ore: vanadium, chromium, manganese in specific ratios. The plant materials may have contained organic compounds that acted as catalysts, but this requires understanding chemistry at the molecular level. The Smiths couldn't see nanotubes. They couldn't measure nanometer scale structures. They couldn't analyze trace element ratios. Al-Kindi, a 9th century Arab scholar, wrote a treatise describing Damascus steel production in detail. The specific ores, the plant materials.
When the ore sources were exhausted, the knowledge became useless.
The masters died. The secrets died with them. Modern metallurgists can now replicate Damascus steel because we understand the chemistry. But the ancient smiths did this without any of that knowledge. How did they optimize nanostructures without understanding atoms? Where did the knowledge originate? Why does this technology appear fully developed with no experimental phase? From metallurgy to anatomy. A weapon that required understanding the human body in ways that make modern doctors uncomfortable. Number 6. The macuahuitl. You're a Spanish conquistador on horseback in 1519. You're wearing steel armor. You carry a Toledo steel sword, the finest blade in Europe. You see an Aztec warrior approaching with what looks like a wooden paddle studded with black stones. He swings once. Your horse's head falls to the ground. This is the macuahuitl. And it just made your cavalry obsolete. Bernal Diaz del Castillo was there. He fought in the conquest of Mexico under Cortés and wrote everything down. His account describes the macuahuitl with horrified respect. He watched Aztec warriors decapitate horses with single blows, clean cuts through muscle, bone, and vertebrae. The weapon is deceptively simple. A wooden paddle, roughly 3 feet long, with obsidian blades set into grooves along each edge. The blades are the same 3-nanometer edges we discussed earlier, sharper than steel, sharper than anything the Spanish had. But sharpness alone doesn't decapitate a horse. You need to know where to strike. The Aztec warrior targets the neck at a specific angle, hitting the gap between vertebrae. The obsidian blades slice through intervertebral discs, sever the spinal cord, cut the carotid arteries. This requires anatomical knowledge, understanding skeletal structure, knowing where bone is weakest. And yet Spanish accounts describe this with fear and grudging admiration. In close quarters, the weapon was superior to Spanish steel swords. The obsidian edges cut deeper. The paddle design generated more force. Aztec warriors trained from childhood in macuahuitl technique. The Codex Mendoza shows macuahuitl training in detail. Young warriors practicing strikes. The macuahuitl wasn't just a battlefield weapon. It was central to Aztec ritual combat. The weapon could remove a human heart in seconds, cutting through the rib cage with precision that required understanding thoracic anatomy. Spanish priests documented this with horror, describing surgical precision in what they called barbaric rituals. And then the Spanish destroyed every macuahuitl they could find. Not just confiscated, destroyed, burned, banned under penalty of death. No complete macuahuitl survives. The technique, the training system, the accumulated knowledge of exactly where and how to strike, that died with the warriors who carried them. How did Aztec weapon masters develop such precise anatomical knowledge? Where did the biomechanical understanding originate? Why does the Spanish record show fear of a weapon they called primitive? And what other technologies were systematically erased because they challenged European assumptions? From individual weapons to siege technology, engineering that shouldn't exist without mathematics. Number 7, Greek fire. You're on a Byzantine warship in 674 CE watching the Arab fleet approach. Hundreds of ships, thousands of warriors. Constantinople is under siege. Then the order comes. Bronze tubes mounted on your ship's bow rotate toward the enemy. Liquid shoots out under pressure, ignites midair, and hits the water. The sea catches fire. The Arab ships burn. The flames spread across the water's surface. Sailors jump overboard and the fire follows them. Water doesn't extinguish it. This is Greek fire. And the formula will be lost for 300 years. The Byzantine Empire called it liquid fire. The Arabs called it Roman fire and wrote about it with terror. For over 800 years, Greek fire gave Byzantium a military advantage that couldn't be countered. Enemy fleets burned. Siege weapons burned. Soldiers burned. The delivery system was sophisticated. Bronze siphons, essentially pressurized flamethrowers mounted on ships and city walls. The liquid was stored in sealed containers, heated and projected through bronze tubes using pump mechanisms. Some accounts describe ceramic grenades filled with Greek fire. The properties were impossible. It burned on water. It couldn't be extinguished with water. It stuck to whatever it touched. Some accounts claim it could be extinguished with vinegar or sand, but water made it spread. And yet the chemical composition is still debated. Likely petroleum-based, possibly naphtha from natural oil seeps. Quicklime, which reacts violently with water. Sulfur, resin to make it sticky. But modern chemists can't fully replicate the properties described in Byzantine sources. Something is missing. The formula was a state secret. Only the imperial family and a handful of trusted technicians knew it. Revealing the formula carried the death penalty. The manufacturing facilities were guarded. This wasn't just chemistry. This was military-industrial organization. Theophanes the Confessor credits a Syrian architect named Kallinikos with inventing Greek fire around 672 CE. Constantine VII, writing in the 10th century, describes Greek fire as a divine gift that must never be shared. He warns that previous emperors who tried to reveal the secret died horribly. The siege of Constantinople from 674 to 678 CE was the weapon's debut. Arab forces surrounded the city. Greek fire destroyed their fleet. The siege failed. For 800 years, Byzantine forces used Greek fire. Then in 1204, the Fourth Crusade sacked Constantinople. The city burned. The libraries burned. The manufacturing facilities were destroyed. The technicians who knew the formula were killed or scattered. The knowledge died. Modern attempts to recreate Greek fire have produced napalm-like substances, but none match the descriptions exactly. How did 7th century chemists develop pressurized delivery systems? What organizational structure protected the formula for 800 years? Why did the knowledge die so completely that 300 years later, we still can't replicate it? From chemical warfare to psychological warfare. A weapon that killed without touching. Number 8. The Maori Patu. You're facing a Maori warrior. He's holding a short club made of jade, no longer than your forearm. It looks almost decorative. Then he tells you the weapon's name. It's history. The warriors who carried it before him. The battles it won. This isn't just a weapon. It's a psychological warfare system. The patu, also called mir, is 12 to 16 inches long. Carved from jade, whalebone, or hardwood. Each material carries meaning. Jade, called punamu, is sacred. A jade patu takes years to carve. A single patu might represent a decade of work, and then you name it. Maori oral tradition records the history of significant objects. A patu isn't just owned. It has genealogy. Each warrior who carried it adds to its story. The weapon accumulates mana, spiritual power, through generations. When you face a warrior carrying his great-grandfather's patu, you're not just facing him. You're facing his entire lineage. The design forces close combat. 12 inches means you have to get within arm's reach to strike. No distance, no safety. Using a patu requires courage. The weapon becomes a test. And yet mainstream archaeology calls this primitive. The ritual combat system, Utu, formalized this. Revenge wasn't random violence, it was structured, governed by rules, fought with patu. The weapon wasn't just for killing. It was for settling disputes, maintaining social order, demonstrating status. The craftsmanship is staggering. Jade patu in museum collections show symmetry and polish that rivals modern machining. The curves are precise. The weight distribution is perfect. The grip fits the hand like it was custom molded. And then Europeans arrived and stole them. The British Museum holds dozens of significant patu. Te Papa in New Zealand has more. Most were taken during colonization. Confiscated, looted, bought from warriors who didn't understand they were selling their ancestors. The most powerful patu, the ones with the longest histories, sit in glass cases thousands of miles from home. The knowledge system survived longer than the weapons. Maori elders still know the names, the histories, the genealogies of patu that no longer exist. How did psychological warfare evolve without written military theory? What social structures supported multi-generational weapon genealogies? Why does a 12-inch club carry more psychological weight than a 6-foot spear? From psychological warfare to two final weapons that show the pattern, nothing was primitive. Number 9, the Chakram and Kopesh. Two weapons, two continents, 2,000 years apart. Same pattern, impossible sophistication, mysterious disappearance. The Chakram is a steel ring, 12 to 30 centimeters in diameter, razor-sharp outer edge, perfectly balanced. You hold it on your finger, spin it, and throw. It flies 100 meters, cuts through whatever it hits, and if you're skilled enough, returns to your hand. This is physics mastery disguised as a throwing weapon. Sikh warriors used chakram in battle from the 16th to 19th centuries. The weapon appears in Gatka, traditional Indian martial arts, with throwing techniques that require understanding gyroscopic stability, trajectory calculation, and wind compensation. The aerodynamics are sophisticated. The ring shape creates airflow patterns that stabilize the spin. The weight distribution has to be perfect or it tumbles. The edge geometry affects cutting performance. Someone engineered this. And yet around 1800 it disappeared. Guns replaced it. The training systems died. Now Egypt, 3000 BCE. The Kopesh is a bronze sickle sword. Curved blade. Hook tip. Standard issue for Egyptian military forces for 1700 years. Every tomb painting shows them. The curve isn't decorative, it's functional. The hook catches shields, pulls them down, exposes the enemy. It traps limbs, locks weapons, creates openings. The blade strikes from angles straight swords can't reach. The metallurgy is precise. Bronze alloy composition. Specific curve radius. Weight balance that allows one-handed use. Egyptian military dominance from 3000 to 300 BCE relied partly on this weapon. Then suddenly, straight swords replaced it. The Kopesh disappeared from the archaeological record. No gradual transition. No hybrid designs. Why abandon a weapon that worked for 1700 years? Straight swords are simpler to forge, but they don't have the Kopesh's tactical advantages. Two weapons, two disappearances. Same question. The Chakram required physics knowledge that shouldn't exist without modern aerodynamics. The Kopesh required metallurgical precision that challenges primitive Bronze Age narratives. Both worked. Both were effective. Both were abandoned. Pattern recognition time. 10 weapons. 10 cases of sophistication that shouldn't exist. Atlatl replaced by inferior bows. Obsidian blades forgotten. Composite bow knowledge lost. Poison arrow chemistry disrupted. Damascus steel formula died. Mkwahuatl systematically destroyed. Greek fire formula lost. Patu stolen. Chakram abandoned. Kopesh replaced. What is it? Number 10, the blowgun. One last weapon. The blowgun. A hollow tube. A dart. Seems simple until you look closer. The tube is perfectly straight. Bore diameter consistent within millimeters across 6 feet of length. Any deviation and the dart tumbles. Someone drilled this by hand, maintaining precision that modern manufacturing would recognize as quality control. The dart is aerodynamic mastery. Fletching made from plant fiber positioned at exact angles to create spin stabilization. Weight distribution calculated to maintain trajectory. Tip geometry designed for penetration. And coated with poison that required chemistry we discussed earlier. This isn't simple. This is integration. Ballistics from the Atlatl. Toxicology from the poison arrows. Precision engineering from Damascus steel. Anatomical targeting from the Mkwahuatl. All combined in a weapon that exists across 3 continents. South America, Southeast Asia, Africa. Independent invention or inherited knowledge. 10 weapons. From 40,000 BCE to 1700 CE. From the Kalahari to Constantinople to Mexico to India. Every single one required knowledge that mainstream archaeology says didn't exist. Physics, chemistry, metallurgy, anatomy, materials science, aerodynamics, psychology. And yet the narrative persists. Primitive humans, trial and error. Lucky accidents. But the evidence doesn't support Gradual. The atlatl appears fully formed 25,000 years ago. Obsidian surgery exists at 10,000 BCE with no precursors. Composite bows show up complete at 3,500 BCE. Damascus steel contains nanotechnology. The Mkwahuitl demonstrates anatomical knowledge that makes doctors uncomfortable. Greek fire's formula is still lost. Mainstream archaeology explains this away. Different sites, different cultures, different time periods. No connection. But what if prehistoric humans were exactly as intelligent as we are? They just used different knowledge systems, oral tradition instead of writing, apprenticeship instead of schools, practical experimentation instead of theoretical science. And when those systems were disrupted, the knowledge died, not because it was primitive, because it was fragile. The blowgun cultures of the Amazon preserved chemical knowledge for thousands of years. Then European contact brought disease, slavery, and cultural destruction. The Spanish systematically destroyed Mkwahuitls. The Fourth Crusade killed the Greek fire technicians. Colonial powers stole Maori patu and banned their use. This was an accidental loss. The performance is documented. The sophistication is undeniable. So which one breaks the timeline beyond repair? The 40,000-year-old poison arrows? The nanotechnology in Damascus steel? The horse-decapitating Mkwahuitl? Defend your choice in the comments. Convince me. This channel exists for people who refuse to accept the textbook narrative. Subscribe for more.